Okay, everybody, so today we are moving on to subtracting decimals, and we are going to start with subtracting tenths. So make sure you have something to write with and a notebook near you because there'll be a few problems that I'll ask you to try on your own after I model some. So we're going to start with the most straightforward types of problems. Okay, so this is an example of a subtraction problem where my numbers line up perfectly. I have the same places after the decimal points, and I can just go about subtracting this the same way I would if these weren't decimals. So I see that it's 3 minus 8. I know I can't do 3 minus 8, so I need to do some regrouping. Sorry. So the 4 is going to become the 3, and the 3 is going to become 13. 13 minus 8 is 5. 3 minus 1 is 2. Just like in addition, I want to bring that decimal point straight down. So the answer I get there is 2.5. Now in the second problem, I actually don't have to do any regrouping because 9 minus 3 is 6. 4 minus 1 is 3. The decimal point comes straight down into my answer of 3.6. So those are the most straightforward problems that you're going to see. So let's try some of those on your own. So here's two problems. I wrote them horizontally. I want you to rewrite them vertically and then try solving them. So pause the video, try them the way I showed you, and then come back and we'll go over them. Okay, so let's try this first one. So I'm going to line up my numbers. I'm going to make sure that I have my decimal points lined up, and then I can subtract. So 2 minus 7, I can't do that. I'm going to do some regrouping. The 5 becomes a 4, and the 2 becomes a 12. 12 minus 7 is 5, and 4 minus 1 is 3. And I'm going to bring that decimal point straight down, so my answer is 3.5. This one here, I have 4.1 minus 1.6. Okay, I can't do that without regrouping, so the 4 becomes a 3. The 1 becomes an 11. Be careful, sometimes we make the mistake of turning that 1 into a 10, but it really is an 11. So it's 10 plus the 1 you already have. 11 minus 6 is 5. 3 minus 1 is 2, and I'm going to bring that decimal point straight down for 2.5. So hopefully you got those answers, and if you didn't, you can see your mistake. So now we're going to move on to a slightly different or more challenging type of problem. Okay, so in this first problem, I have 5 wholes minus 1.2. So the problem here is that I have a decimal and a number in this part here. I don't have a decimal or a number in the tens place here. So I want to add on to my 5. And remember, when you have a whole number, you can always add a decimal point and a 0 to that whole number. So instead of writing this as 5, I'm going to write it as 5.0. Means the same thing, but now it's easier to line up my subtraction because then underneath I can write minus 1.2. When I go to subtract, I can't do 0 minus 2, so I'm going to do some regrouping. So the 5 becomes a 4, and the 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 2 is 8, and 4 minus 1 is 3. And then that decimal point comes straight down, so I have 3.8. Some of you might be able to get this answer mentally in terms of thinking of, okay, from 1.2, how much do I have to count up until I get to 5? And if you are doing that mentally, that's okay, but it's always good to check that mental work with the algorithm to make sure that you've gotten the right answer. Okay, so pause the video and give this one a try. Same exact setup as this, just slightly different numbers. Okay, so let's see how you did with this one. So instead of writing it as 3, because I see that over here I have one place past the decimal, I'm going to write it as 3.0. And then I'm going to subtract 0.2. Okay, so I can't do this without regrouping, so I'm going to make the 3 a 2 and the 0 a 10. 10 minus 2 is 8, and 2 minus nothing is 2, and I'll bring that decimal point straight down, so I get 2.8 as my answer. Now this one, we do have decimals in both problems, but you'll notice that in this first number, I go 2 places past the decimal, and here I only go 1. So just like we added a 0 up here, we are also going to add a 0 to this number so that we can line up our decimals. So I have 5.12, and I'm going to subtract 0.40. 0.40 is the same thing as 0.4, but now everything is lined up. 2 minus 0 is 2. 1 minus 4 I can't do without regrouping, so I'll do my regrouping. 5 becomes 4, 1 becomes 11, and 11 minus 4 is 7, and 4 minus 0 is 4, and I'll bring the decimal point straight down into my answer, 4.72. Okay, so I want you to give these two a try. These are the two more challenging examples that we just tried. So pause the video, try these, and then come back when you're ready to go over them. Okay, so let's see how you did. So up here, we had the type of problem where we have a whole number minus a decimal. So I know I need to add a decimal point and 1 0 to this whole number so that I can line it up with this decimal here. So I'm going to write it as 2.0 minus 0.7, and then I'm going to do my subtraction. So I can't do 0 minus 7, the 2 is going to become a 1, and the 0 is going to become a 10. 10 minus 7 is 3, and 1 minus 0 is 1. And then that decimal point, I'm just going to bring straight down into my answer, so I get 1.3. In this problem, they do both have decimal points, but this goes 2 places past the decimal, and this only goes 1. So I am going to add a 0, and then I'm going to do my subtraction. So I have 0.58 minus 0.30. Remember, 0.30 is the same as 0.3, that's why we can do it, but now everything lines up. 8 minus 0 is 8, 5 minus 3 is 2, didn't have to do any regrouping here. 0 minus 0 is 0, and the decimal point comes straight down for 0.28. So you're going to practice these types of subtraction problems today in your math workbook. So your independent work today, notice that it's 2 pages, but they're not right next to each other, so pay attention to the page numbers. So you're going to do page 54 and 57 in your math workbook today, all the type of subtraction that we were just practicing, so subtracting tenths. And remember, the biggest thing that you need to know is that you want to be able to line your decimals up, and sometimes that means adding a 0, and with whole numbers, even adding a decimal point and a 0. Good luck.